Thank you very much, Carmen, for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, where are you dialing in from today?
So I'm sitting in my apartment in Stockholm, Sweden. So this is actually where I'm from. I was born here in Sweden, but I have my roots in Congo, Kinshasa. That's where my parents are from. And so, yeah, I just got off work from 4:30 to 11,
4 a.m.
4:30 a.m. That's when I start.
Wow,
So I
that's
start,
interesting.
yeah, that's how it is being a journalist, a producer, what I am. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. So it's a nice segue, right? You were kind of like telling us about what you do. So maybe you should, give a little bit background, about yourself, maybe your education, or anything you'd like to share with us about your bio.
For sure. So like I said, I was born and raised in Sweden, and I have always had just the interest of like the world, culture, and like news. And so I've always been interested in news and just wanted to travel a lot. So when I was younger, I was part of a little choir before, and in my school, and we would always um, travel. And for me, that was very interesting because I was so just just like interested in other people's culture and other than my culture. And so I like promised myself that I was like, okay, I want to, see the world and like travel abroad, but also, just getting to know people and their culture by being there. And so I figured that like my interest in journalism, in news, would be a good way to like experience the world outside of Sweden. And so I promised myself when I was maybe in high school to like, okay, I want to do anything to be able to study abroad. But my parents didn't have the financial like to do that, and so they were like, "I'm sorry, we can't like afford this. We can't help you." And so I was very sad about it. However, when I ended high school, I had a professor who had a student, a former student in California, and he was like, "You should talk to this student. He might be able to help you and like just tell you how he was able to start studying in the U.S." And so I came in contact with him, and he's just told me that his whole process and how here in Sweden we actually have this financial department who help. We get like paid to just get paid to study basically, and they help you to uh, go abroad too. And so that's where I started, and I then got like my first actual job to save up money so that I could study abroad. And when I was 18, after I graduated from high school, I took my bags. I told my parents, I'm going to study abroad. Yeah, and they didn't believe me. My family and my parents wouldn't believe that I would like actually do it. But I was very determined that I wanted to study abroad because I wanted to be a journalist. But then I wanted to be an international journalist, and I thought that it would be great to start doing it in English, then studying in Swedish, and then trying to like move abroad later in life and we do everything in English. And so, yeah, that's what I did. And then I first went to California, studied there for 2 years, and then transferred to Utah
Mhm.
at BYU, and I was there for 4 years. So,
That's interesting. We'll dive into that later. It
yes,
must be nice to have your government pay for yours, help you pay to go study abroad.
it is. It is very nice. The thing is, it's kind of like half of it is a loan and half is a grant. Yeah, but in Sweden, education is free here, so it doesn't cost anything. You they
Like if you were Swedish, like
Yeah,
you
no, it
could
doesn't.
go to college
Yeah,
like for free.
zero like
I should
dollars.
move to Sweden.
As an international student in Sweden, it costs a little bit for but for Swedish people, education is totally free. And so a lot of people ask me here or in the US, why would you go abroad to study where it costs money when
That was going to
education?
be my next question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't like the thing is, I think I have never regretted it, and I don't regret that I have my loans from this government because
Mhm.
for us, you don't have. It's a very very low interest, and you can pay till you're 65 years old. So
Whoa,
you have
that's
time to pay off your
yeah,
loan.
yeah, yeah. You take
Very
care of
nice.
it.
And the experience that I got from studying abroad, and also the the experience I have now, like the
Mhm.
opportunities that I got here and when I was in the
Mhm.
US, I could never have gotten it here in Sweden.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, right, when I came from Nigeria to go study abroad in the US, I think the idea was when you have like a foreign degree. I don't know if you know this about if this is the same in Congo. I don't know if I'm saying that wrong, but I know there are two Congos. So
Yeah,
I don't
Congo
know if
Kinshasa is the one I am from.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this is, the same thing there. But when you have a foreign degree, right? When you have like a degree from like a foreign country, a foreign university, like, it makes getting a nicer job and all that. So that was kind
Yes.
of like the idea
Yeah.
for doing it from my own, right? Like was that the same, was that
It was
something of that nature?
yeah, by then when I was younger, when I did move to the US, I didn't like think that that would be the case. But
Hmm.
as I was there and as I learned about how it is in Congo, how it is in Sweden, yes, like if you have a foreign degree, they take it more seriously and they take you more seriously. Like, oh, you
Hmm.
have studied abroad, you're disciplined, you know more, maybe have a
Hmm.
greater network,
Hmm.
you have experience that other people here don't have. So it's a very good like merit thing to have, you know.
Interesting. That's pretty cool. So what do you do now? Like what do you do for your day job?
So right now I actually work as a producer. So I'm producing uh, news for the national radio station here in Sweden. So it's our NPR if you have it in the
Hmm.
US and
Hmm.
just the national radio. And so I kind of decide what's gonna go out to the public. And
Wow.
I like manage the news room with all our reporters and digital reporters and managers, and I decide every day what kind of news we we give to the public, basically.
That's that sounds like
Uh,
a lot of responsibilities.
it is. It is. It's very intense in the best way and in the worst way because, as we all know, news is right now the world is not great, and
I
so
agree.
yeah.
Just
So it's
having a multidisciplinary view, at
yeah.
things might be a lot helpful. I mean, I don't know anything about news or journalism, so you're
But
the
no, yeah,
expert.
yeah. It has been hard too. It's you kind of have to find a balance. If you
Hmm.
work with news like this, like every day you just hear the worst thing that is happening in the world, and you have to like kind of go through pictures,
Hmm.
through interviews, to all of that, and you just hear every day how bad the world is. You have to balance it out with all the goodness because there are goodness too.
Hmm.
And so, as a news producer, I have to also give the public good news. That's
Yeah,
what I strive to not just like say, "Hey, this is happening here. It's you know people are dying or whatever." It's very much it's important for people to know that, but also knowing that there is also people that are doing good things. And
that's.
so, yeah.
I love the balanced approach to that. So thanks for sharing. So when you're not deciding what news people get to, watch or listen to, what do you do? Like outside of work.
Outside of work, I I have a little um, side gig, side business, or so I'm a wedding videographer too, and so I love what I do is that I film weddings, especially during the summer.
Mhm.
I yeah, so I run that little business by myself because it also helps me think about other things than my job. And I find that I want to like, explore my interests. And also I'm a singer, so I sing a lot, perform a lot, at weddings, at little baptisms, christenings for kids, or at events, because music is really something that speaks to me and something I love. So I want to like use that talent of mine, I
Yeah.
guess, to just like fulfill me outside of
Yeah.
this journalism person I am. Yeah.
That's
And
that's quite interesting. So multi-talented.
then yeah. Well, I think the thing that I love the most though of my life is being an aunt. My
Okay.
Yes, my nephew and nieces, like those are my favorite. I don't have any kids right now by myself, but I love
Mhm.
hanging out with my family. Especially when I was gone for so long, for
Mhm.
6 years. I kind of missed their early years,
Yeah.
and so now my favorite thing to do is just hang out with them.
That's amazing. I guess they must be very happy and lucky to have you.
I hope so.
So, you decided you wanted to go study abroad at 18, and you went through kind of like this whole process of, applying, figuring things out, packing your bags, even to the point that it was unbelievable to your family, to your parents that you
Yeah.
could do this, right? So, kind of like give us like a little bit of how did you arrive at the decision that you wanted to go study abroad, and kind of like the thought process into I want to go study abroad, and these are the steps I need to take, or how did you
Mhm.
figure out what are those steps you needed to take to
Yeah.
make it happen?
So it was, if I remember right, it was actually hard to know because my parents usually you have when people well, or I'd say people in my circle back then, when they would study abroad for a year or so, they had parents that could help them,
Mhm.
that maybe I've had other siblings doing it or cousins, or but
Mhm.
for me, like my parents are immigrants,
Yeah.
they don't know anything about like, what the process is, who I'm gonna
Yeah.
talk to,
Hmm.
no. And my brothers, they didn't live at home, they had already like moved out. And so for me, I was very determined as a kid too to just like do things by myself, you know? Which now it's like I'm happy that I did, but also I should have asked more for help. But like I didn't have the resources.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I didn't have any resources. Like now it's it's easier to, go online and just
Hmm.
or listen to someone,
Yeah.
but then it wasn't as I don't know. It was 2014, 14, 15. But I did actually. I knew the thing is when I was younger, I used to order pamphlet home study abroad pamphlets just to
Okay.
look at them. I
Okay.
knew we didn't have money to send me like a year. No,
Yeah.
but I did order them for free, and my mom actually told me, I think it was 2, 3 years ago, that she would hide them because she got so like she felt bad that she couldn't send me abroad because I
Mhm.
wanted it so bad,
Yeah.
but they didn't have the money, so she felt bad. So
Yeah.
she would hide them when it would come home, um, in the mail. But sometimes I would get them and I would just read like, oh, I just imagine myself being away.
Mhm.
Uh, but I knew that that there was one organization here in Sweden that helped students um, to go. So I actually went online, I think, and contacted them, and was like, how should I go about this? And also because my
Mm.
professor uh, in high school knew this person in California. And so that person helped me just like, here are the steps that I took. And so you can try to do this too. But I went online and looked up information, and asked this person if he can help me, like get in contact with the school that he went to. And that was the same school that I
Mhm.
eventually went. did go to. So yeah, but
The one in
and then
Cali, right? Is that the one in
and then in
Cali?
California, yeah, the one in California, I went to Santa
Yeah.
Barbara City College. Um, and yeah, and then I remember I also went on Facebook groups and searched for Swedish students in California, and then just asked there like, how am I gonna go about this? So I asked other people. I think the most important part is to ask, honestly, to see,
Mm,
like, it's
mm,
hard too when you don't have resources, but if you have access for like online, um, it's to like type something in or go on, if you have Facebook or Instagram, whatever it is, like go
mhm.
on groups, because there are other people that are in the same situation as you, even if
Yeah.
it feels alone, it feels like lonely. um, so I found people on that Facebook group that would also go to that school in Sweden, so we started a little
Mhm.
group chat, and that's when
Yeah.
we
That's
yeah.
That's pretty cool. So what I'm hearing you say is, like you knew what you wanted. You like, I want to go abroad to get an education, but you started figuring out like the resources you needed earlier. So like by talking to your professor, by looking for people who have similar interests, in this case, people who
Yeah.
are from Sweden or studying abroad. And also, you were looking into these organizations that, can
Mhm.
help students go abroad. So just there are always resources, right? Especially today with the internet, right?
Yes.
People can dive in and find resources.
Hmm.
So Sweden, I don't really know what the culture is like in Sweden, but from what I've seen on the internet, I think Sweden is, pretty conservative. Might be a pretty conservative country, and so you're going from Sweden to the US, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell us the contracts between like the culture, or what are some of those things that practically stood out to you,
Yeah.
moving from Sweden, especially coming from an immigrant home where you have like, African parents, and then growing up in Sweden, you already kind of like have like, to
Yeah.
match cultures at home, right? So can you tell us a
Definitely.
little bit about, yeah, how that, transitioning, the transitioning?
You know, I can just describe it as identity crisis. That's what my yeah, my I don't know. It's just because, yeah, like you said, like I grew up in an African household, and there is, pretty, people know how it is. It's strict, and it's you should be at home. You should, but education has always been um an important thing for my parents. They've never been like, okay, you have to go to school. Like they have um just what's it called? Told us that it's good to do it.
Mhm.
They gave us this opportunity in order for to us to go to school. And so for them it wasn't like going to school in Sweden or going to school in the US was just like, you're going to school. Great.
Yeah, that
So just
decision
going to
made.
school, yeah, that's good. Wherever you go, we do care, but we don't care because you're going to school, getting an education. So um but the thing is, go coming from, I thought just Sweden in general, like we speak English as a second language.
Okay.
And that was actually one of my first culture shocks moving to the US, how English in the US is not the English I learned in school. Totally not. Because,
Everybody always like, yeah, it's always like,
yeah, yes, it was I would not, my first couple of weeks in school, I had a headache because I tried to translate everything in my head, and it wasn't because I grew up with French, Swedish, and Lingala at home,
yeah.
and then just English in school then, and
Mhm.
just yeah. But I translated English in my head in every, like, at school, every lesson that we had, and I had, my dictionary up. Was so much information coming. It was just a lot. So like the first couple of months, it's not easy. And also, in the US, for example, it's like different culture, and like how you are at home, like walking in with the shoes at home, like school, how school is built up, it's different from
Mhm.
Sweden, especially like the university too. In the university in Sweden was more in Stockholm in the US was
Mhm.
similar to high school, like,
Mhm.
you know, having tons of classes, tons of like, you know, credits the same
Yeah.
semester, which in Sweden is like, and having homework. I did not
Yeah.
think we would have homework because in
Homework in
Sweden,
college,
no,
university.
that's not what it's here. You don't have homework in college. You have
Yeah.
your finals and
Mhm.
exams, midterms, but you
Mhm.
don't have like homeworks like that. Like to every class, you have homework to do.
Yeah.
That was yeah. Um, and definitely here too. It's Sweden is another shock that I have too is Sweden is actually very liberal. Like our
Interesting.
yeah, it's very liberal a country in contrast to US and also in
Mhm.
contrast to Congo.
Mhm.
And so at home and also being, you know, in coming from a religious home that's more conservative, uh, and Sweden being more liberal and more open and progressive and stuff like that.
Mhm.
That was also kind of a shock. And then coming to the US where it's conservative in a different way
Yeah.
than in Sweden, or like also, um, yeah, in politics,
Yeah.
or how you think. Because Sweden is very progressive with
Mhm.
all the progressive.
Policies. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and in the US, it wasn't like that,
Yeah.
and so yeah, but definitely one of the biggest shocks too was just how kind people are in the US, like strangers.
Mm.
In Sweden, that's not the case. You don't say hi to people on the street. It's sad,
Interesting.
but it's very sad, but it's true. People are very cold here. If you break the ice, people will love you and be nice to you. But you don't say
Okay.
hi to a stranger.
I
You
think that
don't.
makes sense. Yeah, because from what I've read on the internet, it sounds like
Uh-huh.
people are like, distant and, just keep to themselves, but it's
Oh.
more like, in contrast to, what I'm used to,
Mhm.
right? So,
Yes. Yeah. And so for me, coming to the US and taking the bus and someone would say like, "Hey, how are you?" And I would say like, "Are you asking me how I am?" Like what? And so it was very like strange. Just and people commenting like complimenting me on my clothes or like, how I looked or ask me questions. That was very interesting for me in the beginning. But then s- I became that person too. So like,
mm,
and that's what I liked about like, okay, well, I became a more open person, and it was more me because I am like that in general. But Sweden is very
mhm.
very cold, a very distant. The individualism is very high
Yeah,
there. But yeah, yeah.
that's interesting. And I think I could relate to some extent with, that when I moved to school in the US, one of the interesting thing is I grew up in Nigeria speaking English my whole life, right? And my professors would say something, and I was like, "Wait, like what?" And because in Nigeria, in the British English specifically, and then certain words, mean different things, right? Like in America, in
Yes.
in Nigeria, you say, where you put stuff in the back of the car, called the booth, right? But in
Mm-hmm.
America, this it's a trunk,
Yeah.
you know, call something, a pickup. And then in the US, they call it a truck.
I
I'm like,
know. Yeah.
okay. So it was,
Those words, yeah. And also, I think I remember one moment, just like the jokes, the internal jokes that you have in the cultures, like Yeah, I think it was,
Mhm.
for me, it was very hard to feel like um, I didn't understand everything. So like, as you know, like when you live in a country, people, you have grown up watching the same movies, or like you can
Mhm.
reference to movies like jokes and stuff, or books, or
Yeah.
whatever it is, popular culture. And I remember coming to the US, people would do jokes about some, a reference from a movie, and people started laughing, and I had never seen the movie. It's an American movie, and so, and I would be like there, and I just be
For me,
quiet,
it was Star
you know.
Wars. When the reference Star Wars or the
Yeah.
reference Harry
Yes.
Potter, it's like what? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so very that was very hard for me in the beginning. Like, just feeling like I was a part of the community, because I felt like I wasn't, because I didn't know what they were talking about. Um, but eventually, after a
Mhm.
couple of years, like
Yeah.
eventually, like you come in
That's
and you start, like, being a part of it. You kind of get everything, and like how people socialize. Um, and so, but it took some time. It took some time to feel like, oh, now I get this culture. I get this. I feel like I can be myself, because it's also hard to be yourself in another language. To feel like you can joke around, or like, because I feel like languages and cultures um, is kind of equal to your personality. You know, when I speak Lingala, I speak it with a different personality than I speak Swedish, or French or English. And so
true.
that was very just that transition was also hard for me, but I eventually got into it. Yeah.
That's interesting. So you do speak four languages: English,
I
French, Swedish, and Lingala.
Yes, and a little bit of German, just a little.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So
Yeah.
seems like language is, being able to living in Europe, I guess a lot of people are drawn to like learning a lot of languages, either, at school,
Yes.
or was this like normal, or you did some of this in preparation to, because of the career path you were
Um, it was kind of normal, because here you kind of like have to know, Swedish. You have to know English, and you learn English in school from like first grade until high school. Like you have to know English, and
Mhm.
then you get another language from seventh grade, and I chose German. So three people
Okay.
here kind of know at least three languages. And then for me, I'm
That's
lucky that my parents I'm lucky that my parents taught me French and Lingala, because a lot of immigrants, or immigrants' parents here in Sweden, they don't teach their kids their own language. They want them to know Swedish. And so the kids kind of lose their origin language. So I'm glad that my parents taught me French. However, I'd say that I put more strength in English in school, just because I wanted to work abroad, or I wanted to study abroad. So
mm,
English was um, I wanted to be very good at English, so I put a lot of energy on it in school. Um, and then yeah.
that's pretty cool. So, you arrive in the US, going to school in California, very big, very, very big state, a lot of diverging or converging cultures, depending on how you look at it. Um, so how did you handle, like, what are some of what did you do, like, in terms of activities, right, to handle kind of like the uh those shocks, those culture shocks that you noticed? Like, what are some of the things that you're able to do? some people would, I think I remember one of the biggest one on campus was like going to some schools have like African student associations, and then, they maybe cook together,
Yeah.
and have, do all sort of stuff. But, other people find other things they enjoy doing, or what are some of those things that you did to, get over some of those culture shocks that you faced with as you arrived in the US for?
So for me, my first semester in the US, I actually lived with 3 Swedish girls, and so that helped me a lot, of just living together with people that are similar to you. But I would just recommend it to do it your first semester, and not the whole time, because
The first
at least there's the first semester. Because for me, if you're going to another country and you want to learn something new, you want to have a whole new experience, and get the most of your experience. You have to be strong enough to put yourself out there in foreign environments, where you don't know people, when you don't know the when people don't have the same culture as you. So my first semester, I lived with Swedish people. We went to like Swedish, parties, and we had Swedish groups. Like we did Swedish celebrations together. A lot of just Swedish thing, and I heard Swedish all the time. So I felt like I wasn't really learning English or the American culture the way I wanted to, but it was good for me the first semester, and just to we could talk about the culture shocks. I had something to want to vent about if something had happened in school, or it was a big, I had a headache, didn't understand something. I had people that I could talk to about, and we cooked Swedish food at home, So that was very nice. Just coming
It's
home
always
and
nice.
yeah, it was very nice. And just having someone who understood me, that was really nice. But then after that semester, when I came back, I moved in with American students. And I only lived with American students for the rest of my time in the US for 6 years. And so, but I still had, my Swedish friends. I still went to for example, I was a part of Black Student Union and at BYU, which was okay, here are some people that understand my African side, There were some Afro-American students in that union, and also African students. And African students like me who are not from, any country in Africa, but have roots in Africa, And so that was such a good thing for me to just have spaces where I could go and be people understand me.
Yeah.
And that's important too, because otherwise you'll feel very lonely if you don't. And sometimes it's hard to find if you go to a whole new place and you don't know anyone. And for me, California and Utah, the majority is white people, especially in Utah. And so it was extra important to find people that could relate to, but also not being afraid to be in spaces where I was the only Black person, the only person with my culture. Because there's so much to get from that too, I feel like.
It's nice to have some soft landing, but then, kind of don't, make that the whole thing, right? Just being able to go out and explore, put oneself out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. I think my internet is still in and out, but we'll see how this go. We're getting closer. So I think I just wanted to know, right? So you went to school, went to 2 years in California, and then transferred to BYU, which is BYU, Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah,
Yes.
right? Really interesting place.
It's really interesting. Yeah.
So, what are some of those things that you did, while on campus as an international student in preparation for the career that you wanted? What are some of
Mm,
those things that you
yeah.
did, and how would you recommend other international students use the opportunity on campus to prepare for the future careers?
Um, I think the most important part is to um, first befriend your professors. That's something like, they had in the US, they had office hours, when
Hmm.
you can like go to the professor and just talk to
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, just talk. Yeah,
Yeah.
have.
And people don't take the opportunity to do it. I think it's very smart. In Sweden, we don't have that here, that you can do that. But in the US, they do a lot of times. A lot of universities, I would say, and it's one of the best opportunities to learn from your professor. But also, they have network. They know people that can help
Mhm.
you um, in your career to get a job. I actually got my first job after graduation from a professor, and so that was just like, I wasn't thinking about it that would come
Mhm.
out as a job, but it did. Just because I asked her. She
Yeah.
was actually she was a part-time professor at BYU, and then she worked for the church in the U in Church Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints in Salt Lake City, and she worked in the newsroom, so she was
Yeah.
a journalist, uh, and I just thought that, okay, she's a journalist and she works not just as a professor but also in the journalist world,
Yeah.
and so I actually just asked her one day when it was her office hours. I was like, is there any way I can do an internship for you guys over there? And she was like, we've never had an intern before. Like, that's not a thing, but let me talk to my boss.
Wow.
And a month and two went by, and she came back to me and was like, Carmen, this is crazy, but my boss said, let's take her in and like have her interview the interview. I did an interview. It was 9 people in that room that interviewed me. The whole like
It's like a
newsroom.
whole panel right
It
there.
was yeah. Oh, it was intimidating. But I got the internship position, and I was actually the first person in the newsroom history as the first intern. And now,
Wow.
after me, there has been, this was 2020, yeah. After me, there has been an internship now and it's going to be, they're going to be an intern forever. But
Wow.
it
Just
was
because you asked.
just because I asked. Just because I asked. And now, not taking credit for anything, but it has opened doors for so many people and people that
Mhm.
now are working there for like, they got a job after their internship.
Mhm.
For sad, like, m- for me, like, it was during COVID times, like they couldn't sponsor me. I had to come back home because of
Mhm.
COVID, and I'm glad I did. But I had the opportunity to be there for a year and a half and work for them, and it was great. And but so befriend your mentors or professors is one of my first advice. But then also, I was a part of like the journalism club.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. And so that was great because we went on trips together and went to like visit other schools.
Mhm.
We could connect with other journalists, students, and also journalists who worked on
Mhm.
TV, radio, newspapers,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And eventually, I became the co-president um, for that
For the club.
club. Yeah, and so that was also a thing. But then, if you see an opportunity to share because people love international students too.
Mhm. Yeah.
They
They want
do.
to help.
They want to help. Yeah, they want to know your story. They want to know where you're from. They want to know
Yeah.
your life. All that. So
Yeah.
I actually was a part of a lot of panels my university at BYU because the opportunity came and I was like, why not? I'll share my
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
And that way people will know you, and
Yeah.
you can, like, you write it on your resume. I did this, I was a part of this, because resume, a lot of companies love when you do things, when you are engaging in, the community, the school. They
Mhm.
don't care about, some companies care about your grades. Absolutely, you need to have
Yeah.
good grades in school. However, they will care more about your engagement and the
Yep.
motivation. What you do, like, not outside, because you can, like, anyone can have
Mhm.
good grades. You can be great at taking an exam, you know, but you can suck at being a good employee,
Yep.
and,
Yep.
like, being a good social person. So having being engaged in campus, that's like a big deal, a good credit to have.
Awesome. Thank you. So, use the resources, join the clubs, talk to your professors,
Yeah.
get internships, ask. I think there's a lot of good things can happen when we speak, right? When we ask.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
like that.
And
Um,
also, I would also say, working on campus
okay.
is, I actually, so I don't know how, I think different school have maybe different rules in different states in the
Mhm.
US, but for
Mhm.
me it was that I could work 20 to 25 hours a week. And I actually got a job on my campus that could give me some money for pickpocket money, but also uh, or pocket money, but also experience. I got a job at a TV station that we had at school. And
Mhm.
because I was in journalism, that was kind of a part of my, degree and, like, my field of work. So that was also good to have, just like on campus jobs that is a can, like, be a part of your degree.
Yeah.
Um, I'd recommend that.
I'm I'm totally a big fan of on-campus jobs. I think, as just like you mentioned, right, outside of getting, pocket money and
Mhm.
all that stuff, it just provides you with like real time, real world experience to
Yeah.
apply what you're
Yeah.
learning in the classroom.
Yes.
So I agree. That's
Mhm.
that's a big one. So, in addition to, all of the surprises, was there like any other things that like jumped out to you when you're contrasting life in the US, to life in Sweden, or in Congo, or even just in general?
Yeah. Um, I think life just in the US is just hard. It's hard. You have to, well,
Hard emphasis.
and I don't know how to say it, but I can, and also it might be different in Nigeria. It's probably hard in Nigeria too, and in Congo, it's different. It's a different kind of hard,
Mhm.
because we look at the US as like this, grand
Mhm.
country with,
Mhm.
have a big economy and, like,
Mhm.
land of opportunity, which it is.
Yeah.
But you kind of have to work really hard.
Yep.
You have to work really hard, and you have to have a good community and, like, a network, or you
Mhm.
have to just work for it very hard. It's not that you can come there and just chill and think that life will be great.
Yeah.
No, it's not for the faint of heart. And also with, like, with, childcare and,
Mhm.
parental leave and all of those things,
Yep.
that you think the US the US have it, they can provide it, but it's not as easy as you think.
Yeah.
And it's not as and especially coming from Sweden, where basically everything is free here.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah, just in general, like, yeah, we have parental leave and all of that. It was a big contrast. But however, too, like, with, I can, maybe in Nigeria and in Congo and African countries, the community, the feel of the community,
There's a huge community
it's,
support.
yeah, it's different than in the US. Community is not the same as in those other countries where you help each other,
Mhm.
and, you have you have your family or your neighbors, or they got your back. You work differently than in the US is very much like, I'm gonna do my thing, I'm doing by myself, and I it's kind of just a competition, kind of,
Yep.
sort of. So that was that was also a culture shock for me to understand that it's um, just the differences. But I think comparing to Sweden, and I know the privilege here is, it's I don't know how to say it, but I know I live in a privileged country. I do.
Yeah.
I really do. And I will, and I think I understood it when I moved abroad more,
Right.
like more.
Makes you appreciate your country. Made you
Yes,
appreciate your country a whole lot more.
yes, yes. And even I have friends that from Angola that studied in the US and came back to Angola. I was like, I love my country.
Yeah. I agree.
I want to be here. Even if I love the US, it's not like there's,
It's not the same.
it's not the same.
Yeah,
It's
I
not the
agree.
same.
I
So,
I feel that way sometimes. Most of the
yeah.
time.
It's yeah. It's just different, and I think, yeah, like you said, you just appreciate it much more. And it's good to go and get your own perception of the world than
Mhm,
like look at in the media, or
mhm.
hear from other people. I always, if somebody asks like, should I go and study abroad? Yes, go.
100. Yeah,
100%. If it's one semester, if it's a year, if it's you know a
yeah,
summer, or if it's 10 years, go. You will learn so much about the world, about yourself, about how you want to, like, what kind of person you want to be.
mhm,
um, but you get so much many more experience, and it will just help you. It will just help you, and it's not easy. That's the thing. Studying
yeah.
abroad is not easy.
Not for the faint of heart, but
It's not for
you
faint of heart, but it's worth it.
yeah, it's worth it. Sweet. So, second to last question. So, will you go back to the US or any other place to go study abroad, maybe for like an advanced degree? Um,
uh that's a hard question, because now that I know I can get my education for free here, I will take it, because no. But if I could choose, I would not. I don't know if I would go back to the US and stay and there permanently, but I could definitely do, like, my master's, or if I would do a PhD degree for a bit and then come back. Um, or I see myself, because I love traveling, and I love, you know, um, just not traveling for fun, but traveling for a
mhm,
purpose. And I could definitely see myself living in Europe.
okay.
Uh, Something that I learned by myself is that I also want to be close to my family. And the US, as much as I loved living in the US, I think it was, now looking back, I think it was too far away from my family, especially
Mhm,
during COVID times when everything shut down and I was by myself in that country and my family was here. And it was
yeah.
like, what if something happens and I can't go home? They can't come. My family couldn't come to my graduation because of, and that was something I was looking forward to for 6 years, 5 years. Um, and so I think moving abroad, definitely not, maybe permanently, but definitely I'll do it again, for just some short amount of time with maybe my future family or my future husband, because you do learn a lot. Um, yeah, but I think I'd be closer to my family for sure.
I love that. And I mean, I love that on so many levels because, from a just an African perspective, right? We're raised, just kind of like,
Yes,
you know, help each
yes.
other. And the world out there today is very hard, and
Hmm.
just not having your loved ones close by makes it a lot
Yeah.
harder. Yeah.
Oh yes, it does. It does. And now it's like, yes, it's thanks to technology and stuff. It's you
Hmm.
can. I think I was able to be in the US for that long because of technology too, because I could talk to I became closer to my family by going away too.
Yeah.
And now
That's
it's interesting, but I did because you learn about how much you love them and what they
Mhm,
mean to you and like what they've done to you.
mhm,
Uh, it's yeah, but I think in general, like for me at least, it was just like I need to be closer and like having my family close and being, my aunt, a sister with my
mhm.
parents.
Yeah,
Um,
love
it's
that.
just different now.
I
Yeah.
love that. So in closing, any, final advice or, word of wisdom from,
Word of wisdom.
for, anybody who is currently trying to, you know, just go through that route of category of people.
I'd I'd say, just do it. Like studying abroad is one of the best things you can do in life. And it's an experience that you'll never like regret. Even if
Hmm.
you might have not had a great experience,
Hmm.
there's always things you learn. Always,
Yeah.
always, always, always.
Yeah.
And getting an education, there's no like regrets in getting educated.
Right.
And I know that money can be a problem for a lot of people.
Hmm.
It's a lot of people can have problems with money, including myself. I didn't have the economy, the finance when I was younger to go abroad,
Yeah.
and I took a loan. Like this government gave me a little loan to do it, and I will have a little loan on the back of my, in my life now or whatever, because I paid off. However, I have a great job now.
Hmm.
I got my experience. I have a whole network with a family in the US.
Hmm.
I've met so many people that could help me that, that experience is just, it's priceless.
Yeah.
It's really priceless. And I don't know, the tip is just do it and do it for yourself and don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask questions ask for help. And also don't be afraid to be unique, to be different, because
Yeah.
that's something also that can be very scary. Coming to a whole new country, you're by yourself, you don't know anyone, you are the only maybe black person, you are the only from an African country, there's a whole different culture. um, but just own it, own it, own it, own it, because you sit on,
Do it and own it.
yeah, own it, do it and own it and have fun. That's the thing. Education is great. However, not however, there's no however. But um and take it seriously, but don't forget to have fun.
Mm,
Otherwise you can have, study it in your home if you're
yeah.
gonna sit in school 24/7, Have fun. Have fun too. Like take advantage of all the people around you and the
Mm,
experience. Go and travel into that new country.
mm,
Eat some new food and like, go and have fun. That's because that's the memories you'll have. You won't have a lot of memories sitting in the classroom or sitting at home studying in your room, you know. That's very good to do, but it's also make time to have fun. The balance. Balance is key. So
I
yeah.
love that. Thank you very much, Carmen, for coming.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate the time. And we look forward to, sharing this with, our audience and educating them. And if somebody were, to have more questions and
Oh
they
yes.
wanted to reach out to you,
Reach out.
where would be the best way? What's the best way for them to reach you?
It's either LinkedIn if they have LinkedIn, Instagram. Karmen Kodia is my name. Facebook. I always reply if it's just say where you like found me, where you heard about
Okay.
me, and I will definitely like help in any way I can. Any way I can.
Okay. Sounds good. So we would link that, your LinkedIn,
Yeah, and
your
my email if so.
Yeah. Okay. We'll link that in the description, and then if anybody have like further questions or they want clarification, they can reach out. Thank you very much for your time, and do enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Bye.
Bye.